This is Average Joe Rock and Roll. I am Michael J. Rock, and I am joined today by Michael Leffler, a world-renowned drummer
Great.
and drum teacher.
Okay.
How are you, Mike? Can you hear me?
Very good, Mike. How are you?
I am good, thank you. Having a little
Very good.
technical
I can
difficulties
hear
out of the
you.
gate here, but hopefully we can power through this. So you're
Yeah. Yeah. You got to love technology.
oh, it's wonderful. So, like I said, hopefully we can power through this. If we can't get through it, we can always do it again, but hopefully we can get through it. So,
Okay.
I had a chance
Yeah.
to
Let's
get
hopefully.
online and take a look at your bio and what you've been doing, what you've been up to, and stuff like that. And you're a pretty impressive dude. Um, what's inspiring you these days?
Well, as far as the drums by themselves, they're as much as ever really just still the pursuit of playing drums every day and expanding and trying to become better and better to my potential. So I'm loving playing as much as I ever have. Just the instrument itself. And of course, I've been in bands through the years and done all the band stuff. I actually have a gig this Saturday night out in Big Bear Lake, and I'm
Okay.
looking forward to that. But yeah, just loving the drums as always.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic to hear you say that, you're still learning after all these years when somebody like a Neil Peart had once said that he never stopped taking drum lessons. Imagine being Neil Peart's teacher.
I know, right? Exactly.
But I guess you can always learn,
Exactly.
right? So who are your influences?
Yeah. Well, I got to say, really, I mean, I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about today, but of course, I thought of this. This might come up. Of course, I love John Bonham, right? I
Yep.
grew up with my older brother playing Led Zeppelin 24/7. So all like that big, huge rock beat, you're hearing it every day. So love John Bonham. I love The Who, love Keith Moon. I have different drummers I like for different reasons. I might have a guy for his energy and spirit, then I've got another guy who I like for his power, and I've got another guy I may like for finesse. So love Danny Carey, love the band Tool. Uh, I love the studio greats. I love the Steely Dan drummers, Jeff Porcaro, rest in peace.
Sure.
Keith Carlock. So through a life of doing the drums, I've really studied everybody. Stuart Copeland, and I love everybody who plays. Really, I don't care what your level is. I love everybody who's sitting down and playing an instrument these days. And have for a long time,
Sure. And that's a good passion to have, especially when
regardless
you're
of
a
your
teacher.
level. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's you mentioned a lot of great drummers there. You started with
yeah,
John Bonham, and I read on your bio where you were drumming to John Bonham at 5. So that's a pretty good place to start.
yeah. That was really, I mean, rock and roll. People ask me, okay, well, what do you play? People ask me quite often, well, okay, you're a drum teacher or you're in a band, like, what do you play? And I'll say, well, of course, as a drum teacher, I've learned to play a lot of different styles from around the world, different genres from Afro-Cuban drumming, Afro-Caribbean, Brazilian, jazz. But what do I love? I love rock and roll. Rock and roll is what I love, right? Because I grew up with it. It just gives you that little adrenaline buzz, and boom, you're in. That's what rock and roll is, bass and drums and energy. And so I, of course, and that would go with in writing as well. I've been fortunate enough to be writing on some records, and what would I compose for music? Well, it's rock and roll. Um, but I do. I find it as a drum player, I find fun and satisfaction to go study these other styles and what those drummers had in their toolbox and in their vocabulary. And the good part about that is you just keep growing as a player. So you are these all these influences are within you, and the more you practice, these will shine back through in your playing. So you really, it becomes part of your personality in your own individual way, which is really great.
Sure. So when you write, do you write with a bass player?
Well, I have in the past. I've been in situations and we're writing, or I've been in the room with just the guitar player and we're writing. I've done it where I'm writing all by myself, spending time on either like a keyboard or a piano.
Okay.
I wrote a song on one of my records, and I wrote 95% of the music on a keyboard, and I took it to the band, and we really just translated the keyboard to the guitar and put some distortion sound on the guitar, and it's a song called Standing Still, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, in writing, I've kind of had a little bit of everything. In the room by myself, people send files. What would you play to this, or do you want to play on this, or do you want to write on this? What would you do? So yeah, all the different scenarios really.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, it's a lot easier nowadays with the internet because you can send stuff back and forth, where you couldn't do that back in the day.
Yes. Yep.
You know, well, you could if you put it on cassette and put it,
Yes. Right.
yeah. Yeah, no, I asked
Yeah.
about the
Right. Old school.
right. I asked about writing with a bass player because I was purely, thinking of it from a drumming standpoint. I wasn't thinking of it from a keyboard standpoint. Obviously that's different. Um, a friend of mine is a drummer and he writes, and he tries to write with a bass player, just to get that rhythm section down, and then they kind of fill in around it.
Yeah. Yeah. However, there's really no right or wrong way.
Sure.
People have their
Yep.
way depending on your friend, that bass player. How melodic is he? How does he play?
Yep.
There's just nothing more fun than creating your own music, authoring, and it's all in your control, of course. And then when you're collaborating, sometimes you got to compromise, and then compromise. Wait a minute, but you have to compromise on some of your ideas or how you want it to sound this way or that way. It's probably why like these bands that get more successful pretty soon. Somebody's got a solo record coming out, and then the singer's got a solo record too, and they have maybe they're not happen to deal with another writer, strong writer in the band, but it's such a hard thing of all the things to really get chemistry in a band. Like when we look back at the greats from Aerosmith to you name it, right on down the line to early U2, and it's to that this chemistry that this chemistry was able to work. I mean, it's just really a beautiful thing because it can be hard just to put your name out there and look for other people, and it could take a while to come up with something that's it's working with chemistry. It's a
Yes.
crapshoot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that can be a challenge. There's a lot of challenges, but that certainly is one of them.
Yeah, and as a fan myself, when I go and watch bands and I listen to music and stuff, you can almost differentiate the guys that are really gelling versus the guys that are just there for to put their time in and then move on. A band that I think of that has super
Yeah,
great chemistry is the Winery Dogs. I don't know if you've heard them or not. Um,
yeah,
Richie Kotzen,
sure.
Billy Sheehan, and
Winery
Mike
dogs.
Portnoy. Yeah, yeah. And those guys have fantastic chemistry. Those guys genuinely like each other. They love writing with each other and they
Sure.
make each other better.
Right. That is definitely so true. It's as you do this long enough, it really does come down to the people you're working with, and if you can be in the room with them. I know that kind of sounds like rock star fight, prima donna diva thing, but it really is. As you get older, it's just you're spending a lot of time with these people, so your best creativity is going to come out when there's a good energy and vibe in the room, and you want to hang out. So of course, Mike Portnoy, they're top notch, right? Billy Sheehan is legend. So is Mike Portnoy. So they're great musicians and they're probably great friends. So they're having a blast, right? It's at the top of the uh, reward of it all. It's very rewarding to write your own. certainly I've been in bands and bands that were more successful than anything I've been in. Sure, they had their fights and this and they're at each other's necks, but they go on stage and there's all those people and the music is played and they can all just let that go the other 22 hours of the day. If you're working with these people day in and day out, it can really, it gets old like anything. It can wear you out after a while when personalities don't match or
Right.
probably most of the time it wouldn't have to really be necessary if communication was better, but it happens. We know that, egos get huge. Big ego has always been part of it. That can be self-sabotaging.
Yeah. Yeah. I love a line by Alice Cooper one time. He said, he says, I tell my band, ego stays on the stage. When you're off the stage, the ego goes away because all those people you come in contact with are signing your paycheck.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I've through my life, whether I went attended drum clinics or met this famous drummer or that famous musician, it seemed like a lot of times when they were real amazing, like I'm talking about, you know, really high level people in the industry, a lot of times they're very humble. They're very cool, down to earth. Like I did drum lessons with Mike Mangini. He's of course the drummer for Dream Theater now. I had a great experience studying with him. He gave me a lot of insight on knowledge I did not have, which is all the physiology happening when you play the drum set. So to learn at the time, I was about 27 years old. But back to the original point, Mike is just a great, humble guy with his work ethic is just on another level. He's like Michael Jordan level work ethic on a drum set, and I found that same experience on a lot of some of the very greats. Now there are stories too. There are at the same time on the other side of the coin. I've had the when I was living in New England. My band was quite popular, local around the area. We did some warm up shows, and some of them were really egotistical. You know, I won't mention any names, but then you did run into sometimes where you know someone had a real seemed like to have a really big attitude or didn't care less and that kind of thing. So I guess it's just part of it all.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story, or actually not that funny. It's kind of sad actually, but I saw the band Adrenaline Mob. I don't know if you've heard of those guys or not. Um, AJ Piro was the original drummer for that band,
Yeah,
and
Adrenaline Mob. I've heard of it.
yeah, so it was a super group.
Now, who was? Yeah,
It was Russell Allen on vocals, John Moyer on bass,
yeah,
AJ Piro on drums, and Mike Orlando on guitar. And guys were really good and great and all that. But there was hardly anybody there. It was a small venue. So after the show, me and my buddy hung around, met the band, got all their autographs and stuff.
yeah,
And AJ Piro was the last one we got the autograph from because he was tearing down his drum kit. And we went to the edge of the stage. He says, "Hang on a second, guys. I'm going to finish up and then I'll be right down." So he finished putting his drum kit away, and then he comes down. He sits on the edge of the stage, and he says, he says, "I've been doing this 40 years." He says, "I've never taken a sick day." He says, "My drum tech's been out for a month." He said, "So I'm tearing my own equipment down." So anyway, we have this conversation, right? The following day, they roll their tour bus, and he ends up having to be out for a couple of shows after making a comment that I've never taken a sick day. 6 months later, he was dead. Had a heart attack, massive heart
wow,
attack on his tour bus, and died.
oh
Um,
yeah,
but he made that comment. It was like, wow, and then the following day when
yeah,
I heard that, I couldn't believe it because he had just made that comment.
yeah, yeah. I was a big fan of AJ. When I went to music school, he actually did a clinic at our school, and another great guy. Of course, I was a fan back on in Twister Sister heyday. I was
Yeah.
there. I was in the front row, probably in Glens Falls, New York, and
Oh,
just in awe, right? And he was great.
you see him at Memorial
He was
Auditorium in
great.
Burlington when they were in Memorial Auditorium.
It seems like I probably did. I think I did. I remember seeing Metallica there. I'm trying to, yeah, I almost remember, I remember the show in Glens Falls better.
I remember seeing him, a Twisted Sister in Glens Falls, New York, and it was that summer they were just beyond huge, right? I guess it was We're Not Going to Take It. The video was out.
Yeah.
But then that's right, they did play in Burlington. So right on. I guess did White Lion open up for that show? I think we were on the floor, I believe. I think White Lion opened up, if I'm remembering correctly.
So they played there
But
twice.
another time I saw Metallica there. Yeah.
Yeah, at the
Okay.
fairgrounds, right? Yeah. Yeah, I was at that show. That was like 93, 94.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I remember seeing Metallica at Memorial Auditorium, and it was like so hot. It was like 98 degrees
Oh, no
inside
kidding.
the place,
Wow.
and it was just really crazy hot that night. But
Yeah.
I think it was the Injustice for All record.
Yeah.
Yeah, Injustice for All. They actually ended up coming through Burlington, Vermont. Yeah,
That's
pretty
crazy.
crazy.
Well, I saw Motorhead and Alice Cooper there in 88.
And Metallica,
I mean, crazy the
yeah,
stuff that we saw there.
all these years later, Metallica. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I remember just really those two concerts. Usually we were heading over to New York State, but surprisingly, Metallica just played in LA last night. They play. It looks like I checked out their schedule. They do. It looks like they're doing like Friday night and Sunday night in whatever city they're playing that week.
Okay.
I don't know what the logic is behind that, but there must be something. They Now I look, and so they're doing it. Did you notice that they're playing Sunday, and that it looks like that's it. That's the tour. And then they're going to Phoenix, Arizona this week. They're playing Friday. They're playing Sunday,
Okay. Yeah.
and
No, I
then
didn't
they're
see that.
going wherever else next. And it looks like if I got the schedule correct, maybe I'm wrong, and I don't think so though. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they're still out there playing. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Metallica
No,
all these
they're,
years later.
you know what? I mean, they're still as good as ever. And, those guys, are second to none, really. If you think about,
Yeah,
the musicianship and, they, with the exception of, continuing to swap out their bass player, you know, there, there's quite a few original guys in that band, which, a lot of bands that have been around that long don't have that many originals.
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. Again, that's like with Metallica. What comes to my mind is how many killer guitar riffs, right? How many killer guitar riffs are in their catalog? Oh man, the Master of Puppets record, the whole thing is brilliant, and like all these beautiful little mid interlude bridges and stuff. It's so good.
Yeah. The
Really got a
first,
lot of respect for all that songwriting.
so at that time when that album came out, I was listening to, just like you, I was listening to a lot of Twisted Sister. I was listening to a lot of Rat, a lot of Motley Crue. That was basically my repertoire of music, right? And then I heard Master Puppets and I was like, I don't really get this because it was different, but it intrigued me. And the first time I heard it, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to listen to it again. And then I was compelled to listen again. So I listened again. And then I listened again. And then I listened again. And I was like, these guys are from a different planet, and of course then thrash just took off after that,
Yeah,
big four and all that. But Metallica was just like the pioneers. They blazed it.
yeah. Yeah, it is interesting how we find new music. I can still, this is like a lot of things you don't remember how it happened the first time, but I do remember with Metallica specifically, I can still remember it very clearly. I was with some friends and we were all into the Motley Crue, Twisted Sister, what people call the hair
Yeah.
bands for today, right? Van Halen, and then we were on our way to a concert. Actually, we were on our way to a concert, and somebody had the Master of Puppets cassette, and we're playing it. And it's like, yeah, this newer band, Metallica. It's like, okay, I don't know. And then it didn't take long, and we were all just vibing on it, and it was so aggressive, and it had such angry parts, and we became fans fast. There wasn't much time between. Oh, is this new band like these guys?
fell in love with that record. I actually saw them on that tour open for Ozzy. They were on tour, Master of Puppets, and then they were opening for Ozzy, and I was lucky enough to
See that show, and that was also in New York State. And of course, that was Cliff's final tour. Cliff was still alive, and but to this day, I love that record, Master of Puppets. These songs, there's Leper Messiah. Oh man, love that stuff. You know.
Yeah, that early stuff. Of course, a lot of people discovered Metallica when the Black Album came out, or maybe the song One. And that's what a lot of people, the more mainstream,
Right.
fan, knew that stuff. And if you were a deeper fan and you went into the catalog before that, that stuff didn't even compare. It was good, but it didn't even compare.
Yeah.
And I think that was Bob Rock that produced
Yeah.
that album. And Bob Rock was a
Yeah.
polisher.
It's just, yeah. Yeah. I am a fan of sometimes when the band is still hungry and they don't have the millions of dollars or the deal yet, but they're living music. Literally, you hear about, well, we were living it. And yeah, when that's what I talked about, this chemistry thing earlier. It just seems to be a variable that's so important in how real and fantastic the music can be. And it's just a lot. It seems like it's a similar story a lot of time. These group music because they lived it and loved it, and that was life in the day. And back in the day, there was a record industry that could nurture that and bring this talent to fruition and put it everywhere. And of course, that's what happened. But what I like most of all about it is the chemistry and the pureness of those bands. And then I find that sometimes records that happened 10 years into the career of the band, it's still good, but it doesn't quite have that urgency or that realness that maybe the guys had when they were writing, and there was no guarantee on anything, like early Aerosmith. I like the early Aerosmith. I even like some of the older stuff, but Steven Tyler's writing with a songwriter, Desmond Child, and of course he writes with Perry too. And I'm not putting that down. And if someone's creating a really good song, I don't care how it comes to created. And at the end of the day, a great song is a great song. But I love it. I still loved it. Like early Black Sabbath is one of my. I mean, I love Black Sabbath all through their career, but it's the same kind of story, right? How great is their story, right? It's like that's just the coolest thing ever. And the first record, I don't. They recorded that first record in a short amount of time and not on a big budget. And we talking about guitar riffs. What about? I mean, they're the godfathers of a darker, heavier riff, right? So
Yeah.
love Black Sabbath and Ozzy.
Yeah, I'm actually reading Geezer Butler's book right now. It's quite interesting.
I'll go back through and people will say, "Well, what do do you like? Do you like Motley Crue? Or do you like Ozzy better?" And oh yeah, yeah, yep. Well, I mean, their story is quite amazing, and then Ozzy Osbourne, his story is he's had quite a life, right? But
Yeah,
love his music and everything. I love almost everything Ozzy's ever done. I'm a big Ozzy fan.
yeah. Nope, I'm right there with you. That, or especially I mean, you talk about, somebody starting out and, coming on with a force and then changing a little bit 10 years later. I mean, Ozzy fits right into that too. Once you get beyond, the Zach Wild years, things start to morph for him a little bit.
Yeah,
But that early stuff,
yep,
the first time I heard Ozzy, I
yep.
couldn't believe it because he
And
didn't
then the
sound like
Randy
anybody else.
Rhodes. I'm such a big Randy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I know I was young enough. Not that I'm not young, but I think I was young enough where it was. I remember listening to Black Sabbath, but I remember just that where it really took off was Crazy. I remember just if I was in whatever, if I was in junior high, I guess I think I was in like seventh grade, and all of a sudden, Crazy Train was everywhere. But I actually like the other songs better on the record, and those first two records, his solo records, are just awesome.
Yeah,
Diary of a Madman. I mean that record, I call it masterpiece, right? That's like a masterpiece
it
record.
is. Yeah.
The song Diary of a Madman with Randy Rhoads contributions and classical training, so amazing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that could never be duplicated. You know, those first two
Sometimes
records.
you'll compare what's out there today compared to that, and it's like, oh my god, this is like,
Yeah, it doesn't even compare.
yeah.
Those first two records, they were
Not to go
basically
into,
interchangeable. I mean, every song on them was
yeah,
great.
yeah,
You know, and there was some stuff on there too that, you know, no, that was great that nobody ever really talked about, like No Bone Movies. You know, I mean, great stuff, great stuff. Um, but yeah, I listened to those
yeah,
over and over again to the
yep,
point where I had to replace
yeah,
my cassettes because I listened to them so much.
yeah.
That's the thing. I went through an Iron Maiden kick. I was 14, and that Peace of Mind record.
I tell you what, I must have wore through 3 copies with the needle because I just played that Iron Maiden record night and day. And I was into those guys huge too. But of course, obviously Judas Priest too.
Yeah,
Love those guys.
yeah. Well,
And
that
I'm
British
actually
metal
lucky.
was.
I'm in a tribute band. I've been really enjoying it. I'm drumming. Say that again. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying that, you know, some of those British metal bands were unbelievable. You know, you could throw Saxon in there too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. The Judas Priest thing is another one. They had their '70s stuff, and then the sort of like maybe the pinnacle of their writing was '82 through '84. And I know some people say, well, no, man, but of course, Screaming for Vengeance and Defenders of the
Oh,
Faith, right? Those
oh,
two, of course, that's when I went and saw them in concert. So maybe I just am impartial to that era. But I love the '70s stuff too. Sinner and Deliver the Goods. And uh, I love that stuff still to this day.
yeah. No, that stuff's all
So I'm
fantastic.
having a good time playing that, having a fun time playing the Judas Priest stuff.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
the first time I heard Judas Priest, I was at my
yeah,
I was with my cousin and we were at his friend's house. We were in their basement, lifting weights and stuff like that. And he had a record player, had a turntable, and he put the needle down on side two of Defenders of the Faith. And the first note that I heard from Judas Priest was Love Bites. And I was blown away by what I heard. And to this day, that's my favorite Judas Priest record, just because that's
yeah,
how I learned about Judas Priest. And then,
yeah,
you know, I mean, just phenomenal, phenomenal band. Just different sounding.
yeah,
Rob Halford's voice. I mean, if you've ever listened to like Resurrection, his solo
yeah,
album, you know, the notes that he hits in that record, it's crazy. And I watched him do some of that stuff live on like YouTube and
yeah,
stuff, and he hits it live.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yeah. On on
yeah. He is something special
yeah. And
because, like, I've had this tribute. It's well, COVID kind of made the whole thing be disappear for like a year and a half, but we've had to look for a few singers. So of course, it's not. You have to find someone who can do his register, the low register, but then the falsetto stuff, which doesn't even really sound like falsetto. It's so strong, So luckily, the guy we have
Job, so obviously it makes it a lot of fun when you can go
on the stage and rely on your bandmates to bring it. We played down in San Diego this past spring, and we had an amazing time. We literally, the place, as far as audience reaction, it just was upside down. It was so good. And so looking forward to, it's all about bringing the spirit to the songs.
yeah.
So looking forward to this week to go play some more tunes with them.
So are you pretty diverse with that band, or are mainly into the metal stuff?
Yeah, it's just not really a diverse. I should say it like this: I'm not just into metal. You know, it's like that was my up when I was in high school. That was my thing. Metal music. That, of course, it was the most. It was very popular at the time. I don't know if you still there, man.
Yep,
Okay.
still here.
I wasn't sure if I lost you for a second. Um, but I love it all. I'm not just
Still doing heavy metal. I love anything that's well written. I do every. I love Steely Dan. I love anybody who's writing a good song. I'm a fan of it.
Yep,
But I'm not just locked into heavy metal. No,
yep.
for the most part, right? Yeah.
So, who do you think? I think I already know the answer to this, but who do you think was the metal pioneer?
The metal pioneer. Well, that is a very good question. But to me, I may have to stand on Black Sabbath, the metal pioneer, or Judas Priest. But it with for me the riffs of Tony Iommi, and I think you probably know the story if I've got the story correct, because it's like, oh, that he was missing part of his finger, so he wore something over his finger, and they tuned the guitar down lower to make it easier. And I feel like those riffs are a big part of heavy metal as we know it.
I would agree with
You know,
that.
the early Black Sabbath stuff. But
Yep, yep.
somebody can argue. I mean, Judas Priest, the '70s stuff it's heavy, but it's still kind of almost like still just you can just hear the blues guitar. Now I know that Iommi had the blues guitar influence too, but because the sound was darker and tuned down, it sounds heavier. It sounds like what we perceive.
you know.
Yeah,
I love when a guitar player detunes and plays a detune because it makes the music
Sound heavier is because it's like the lowest string is tuned to D. But how about you? What would you say as a pioneer?
so
Would you
I
say the same or somebody else?
nope, I would agree 100%. I figured that's what you were going to say. I think that's what most people say. I mean, obviously there were bands before that
Yeah,
that were heavier, like the Who and stuff like that, that kind of led into that.
yeah,
But you're right. I mean, the first metal riffs came from that
yeah,
band, in my opinion.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
so yeah. So
yeah.
unfortunately, Mike,
Uh,
we're
I
about out of
remember
time
that's when
here.
I remember when this.
No, go ahead. Still got a minute.
Okay. Okay, well, cool. I was just going to mention, we talk about these records. Another record that I must have played a million times over was "Speak of the Devil." That's Ozzy had left Black Sabbath, but then he went on the road and he was doing like half Black Sabbath tunes, half his solo record, and that live record is so good.
Yeah,
Brad Gillis played guitar and just
and then Tommy Aldridge was on drums.
and it was these Black Sabbath songs live with like just a bit different musicianship. It was really amazing. So I listened to that record so much. Symptoms of the Universe and so good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I listened to that a ton, and I mean, at one point, I could recite everything that Ozzy said during the songs and after and between the songs. I remember the line where during Snowblind, where he's like, "Is everybody
yeah.
high?"
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So no, that was great. And Brad Gillis, unfortunately,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
after Randy Rhodes, and he wasn't going to fill his
Yeah.
shoes. He stepped aside, and then Jakey Lee came in. Um, but anyway, like I said, Mike,
Right.
unfortunately, we're running out of time here.
Yeah.
It truly was a pleasure having you on today. Um, and with that, uh,
Okay.
I am Michael J. Rock, and I am a rock fan. Enough said. Thank you, Mike.